Hi guys, how you all doing? Monday evening, and we've got some pretty significant transfer news for you guys today, which will hopefully put a bit of a smile on your face and give you some hope for the last 6 weeks or so of this transfer window. Before I get into the news, the exclusive update, please, if you're new to the channel, subscribe. I've really appreciated the extra subscribers I've had over the last couple of months. Hit the like button to allow me to understand and know if this is the sort of video you guys like. Thank you to those who did that on the last video, and of course leave your comments in the comment section below. I do read them all, and I'll try and get back to as many as possible. So now that's out the way, let's get into the video. As you can probably see from the headline in my piece, there's some pretty significant transfer news, because Newcastle are stepping up their interests, their pursuit should I say, in the Eintracht Frankfurt forward HUGO Ekitike. Now, you might have seen a couple of stories over the weekend, one from Fabrizio Romano, the other from Luke Edwards of The Telegraph, saying that Newcastle remained interested in Ekitike and it was a deal that they could potentially look at this window. Their information is correct. And I can go a little bit further and say that Newcastle have actually held talks with Eintracht Frankfurt and also the players' representatives over the last 5 or 6 days. So Newcastle, a delegation from Newcastle travelled to Frankfurt last week to meet for a series of meetings in Germany, before then travelling back to finalise the Alanga deal. And there was a little bit of a, not a hold up, but a little bit of an impasse. But those talks have intensified again today, as representatives of HUGO Ekitike have travelled from Germany to Austria to meet with Newcastle at their base in Innsbruck. Of course, Newcastle flew out to Austria this morning for a warm weather pre-season training camp. Pretty clever of them to use that opportunity to meet again with Ekitike's representatives, and from what I'm hearing is talks are intensifying, and there is a real chance that this deal could get done. Now, you remember Newcastle tried and failed to sign HUGO Ekitike back in 2022, January 2022 it was, so over 3 years ago. Just a couple of months after the takeover went through, Ekitike on deadline day I think chose to go to PSG instead, but Newcastle at one stage felt it was a done deal. They thought they had their man. It was significantly less money there than the amount we're talking about now, but of course inflation, prices have gone up, the market's changed, etc, etc. And I'm told that Newcastle are in talks with Ekitike's representatives and Eintracht Frankfurt over what would be a club record transfer for the French 23-year-old striker. So big news this. It's gone beyond the interest stage. Talks aren't just taking place, they've been taking place now for 4 or 5 days, and Newcastle are making it clear, I'm told from one source, to Ekitike and his people that he is the player they want to essentially help spearhead their Champions League attack next season. Now, before you all get worried, that doesn't mean, when I say spearhead, that Alexander Isak's going. The information I'm being told is that Newcastle want Isak and Ekitike to play together next season. Now, that might be a slight tweak in the formation. Of course, Ekitike can play wide right, he can play wide left. He played wide left a lot for Eintracht Frankfurt last season, but you could also almost play him in a number 10 or a false 9. And of course he'd be a great option in other games that Isak couldn't start. I don't think, and I know a lot of fans are worried thinking this means that Isak is going. I don't think this means, from what I'm hearing, that Isak's going. I think it's probably a bit of succession planning, and if they were able to bring in Ekitike, they feel they've got a player who could be as good as Alexander Isak in the future. And look, I think the plan is, and the hope is, that they sign Isak down to a new contract, regardless of when he's going to leave. But if that doesn't happen and they're forced to sell him next summer, then at least they've got the next player coming in already in the ranks in Ekitike, with a full year under his belt, working alongside or under Eddie Howe. So I think that's the thinking in it. I think they don't want to lose Isak further down the line and be left with someone who's not as good. They want the the next successor to the throne, if you like. And clearly, because they've been trying to sign him for 3 years now, they feel that HUGO Ekitike is that man. So one source has told me that Frankfurt are looking for 100 million euros for the striker, which equates to around about 85 million pounds. My understanding from a Newcastle point of view is they value the player less, shall we say. But if they were to do a deal, there's a kind of private understanding that it would probably break their transfer record, which of course is the 63 million pounds that they paid for Alexander Isak 3 years ago. So this would be a club record deal. So it's big money we're talking about here. I can't see Newcastle paying 85 million pounds. Could I see them paying 65, 70, 75 million pounds from what I've been hearing over the last couple of days? Potentially, yes. It sounds as though Newcastle have targeted him. They've made it clear that he's the one they want to bring in. Remember, they've already missed out on Delap, João Pedro, and I know, although he doesn't play the same position, but Brian and Mbumo as well, players who've chosen to go elsewhere. And they're probably at a stage there now where they're thinking, look, let's not bring in 2 or 3 players that were kind of second or third choices. We've always liked Ekitike. Let's throw our money at it and try and get him. Now, of course, that wouldn't leave much in the budget, if anything at all. So how they finance this, I don't know. Do you need to sell? Of course, Sean Longstaff looks like he'll probably go. That'll bring in a small amount of money, 15 million pounds. Joe Willock could potentially go. I don't know. I'm not too sure about that. I know Eddie loves him. Does this mean that Anthony Gordon might go? As we know, he was a bit unsettled last summer. Didn't have his best season last year. Could this be the summer where we see Anthony Gordon move on? Potentially. I don't know. Could Newcastle bring funds forward from January and spend it in advance like we've seen with Lewis Hall and Anthony Gordon in the past? Potentially. Or could Newcastle decide, hang on, we don't really need a goalkeeper right now. Let's shelve the move for James Trafford. Use that 30, 40 million pounds, 35 million pounds we're willing to spend towards Ekitike and bring in a striker of real quality here. Potentially. I mean, I don't think there would be anything wrong with starting with Nick Pope in goals for the season. I still think he's a great goalkeeper, and I think he's got the full respect of everyone at the football club. So it'll be interesting to see how they finance this. It certainly has caught a lot of us by surprise as to the size of the fee that would be involved for HUGO Ekitike, because there's strikers out there that Newcastle could get for half the price, but Eddie obviously wants to bring in a player who's going to affect the starting 11, and perhaps he sees Elanga, Isak and Ekitike as his front 3 next season. I don't know. Perhaps he sees Ekitike playing off of Isak with one of Gordon or Elanga down the side and maybe a more inverted midfielder. Time will tell. But look, it's exciting times. Sorry about that wind there. Great to see that Newcastle are in talks over a player of such value. And let's see what happens. But yeah, so talks took place in Germany last week. Those talks were shelved for a couple of days, but they've intensified again today in Austria. I'm told that Newcastle, from one source, that Newcastle are really pushing hard to sign Ekitike now. And it's one that could potentially happen, but also I'm very aware that it feels like there's a gap in the valuation, and we've seen how long the Elanga deal took to go through, so that could be another situation like that again. So look, I can't see anything getting done really quickly, but I think interesting that his representatives have gone to Austria to meet Eddie Howe and the recruitment team in person on the back of the meeting last week. So this isn't just a couple of phone calls or a couple of inquiries. This is some real in-person conversations as they try to get together and work out what kind of fee would be accepted by Eintracht Frankfurt. So look, clearly a player that Newcastle have kept their interest in for a number of years now, clearly a player that would excite you guys as fans, and the fact those talks have taken place over the last week would just gives you an idea into how far down the line we are with this one, and that there is a potential that this could happen. So so yeah, club record fee being discussed. I don't think the amount that I mentioned, 100 million euros that Frankfurt want, would be accepted by Newcastle, but perhaps they can come to some middle ground on this. So so there we have it. reported interest at the weekend. We can follow this up with some further concrete news that those talks have taken place and they continue to take place today. And according to my colleague over in Sky Germany, Newcastle pushing hard for HUGO Ekitike today, and they've made it clear to his representatives that they'd like to bring him to Tyneside. So watch this space. Leave your comments below, guys. Keen to hear what you've got to think. Take care.